Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Al Rosen.
Welcome to CAD-134, Basic AutoCAD for Interior Design. Today, we're going to look at Module 7, Dimensioning and Area Calculations. Here's Lab 7A. And in Lab 7A, we're going to download a CAD file. We've given you the student version of this conference room. And we're going to calculate the area of each of these individual rooms. And we're going to put that area into this table. And then we'll come up with a total. We'll also dimension the interior room sizes. And this is very typical of some of the work that we've done when we go through and do remodeling projects here at the college, where we'll have an empty room and then we've got to put a machine shop in there, or we've got to put a Cisco networking lab. So Al and I have done this many times. Okay, so to get this lab started, what students will do is they'll click on the file and they'll open it. And so this opens up in paper space, and you're to fill out the title block information with your name. But you'll notice a lot of the things have already been kind of set up. If I double click within the viewport, you'll see that the viewport is set. This one has not been set to a specific scale. We could certainly fix that if we want to by unlocking it and then dialing in a scale. Let's try something like 1/4 of an inch equals a foot, a little too big. Sure thing. Not quite.
Nope.
But it sure beats working with a pencil. Let me tell you, where I have to have paper. So it dials in at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. And this is how I would recommend doing it. And I would lock it. And then I would come down here and, oh, look, that's what it should be. 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. So now when we print this, like we talked about last week, if I were to print this drawing, I would go File, Plot. And then I would dial in my plotter. For today, I'm going to just dial in a virtual plotter, PDF. And so I'll make an AutoCAD PDF. It'll be a B-size paper, but it'll be printable and scalable. And when I say scalable, it means that you'll be able to measure it. So when you print from layout, you leave it at layout, or you could do a window, but you don't want to scale it here. You definitely don't want to use fit to paper if you're going to be measuring things. Let's say we're going to the facilities department and we're buying furniture. So we're on our way to our meeting and we just need to print with our scale. So we dial in the printer, we set up our paper size, we leave this at layout and full scale, we'll preview it. Looks great, right click, plot, and it'll save it to a virtual file. And so we'll save it to a file and we'll put this in our 134 class. And there it is. You can print it. You can print it on a B-size printer. It'll be just fine. Back to our drawing. So students are to download that file, and you can adjust this viewport and set that up at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. Step 1, calculate the room areas. And so if we go to model space, we can zoom in on the president's office, and we can calculate out the area. To calculate out the areas, go to the Home tab, and in the Utilities area, we're going to use Area. An area calculation should be used with Object Snap. So make sure that your OSNAP is enabled and that you have endpoint and intersection enabled. With that said, we can go through and we can trace around the room. And it'll create this little bounding box, which will then allow me, if I really want to be specific, I can go around this little column. Once I get everything green, I just hit enter. And it tells me that the area is 304 square feet. So I'll hit enter, and then I will go over to my table, double click, 304, green check mark. Now, the alignment of the text could have been better. I could have go to justification here, and I could say top center, and now it's centered, and we'll green check mark it. All right, let's do office number 1. Measure, area, and we get an area calculation of 162.6. So we'll just round that up to 163. Double click in the box, 163. And then I'll set the justification for this. And I could go through and set them all, but what fun would that be? All right, so your job is to calculate out all the room areas and then the total area for the entire enterprise. And so as we go through, you'll probably find that you'll need to calculate in the hallway if you want this to be a total square footage plan. All right, we have this laid out in paper space with viewports. And so this is a viewport. This viewport is turned off, so we don't see it. And this is also a viewport. And so if we want to look at turning those viewports on, we just look at the layers that are turned off, and we can see if maybe we can find which one it is. Here it is, VP1 and VP2. So if I turn those on, and then I change the colors to red, something real visible, you'll see that that's viewport 2. And then if we go back here and look at viewport 1, actually I had them backwards, but I think you know what I mean. You can see the viewport. So it's very common, as we talked about last week, to use viewports and then to dial in the scales like we did here, where we set the scale at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. And then we updated it so that we can go and use our scales to measure things if we're working with other departments. All right, so that's step 1 and step 2, and then step 3 is to dimension the interior room sizes. And so this chapter in the textbook goes through quite a bit on how to create dimensions and how to create dimension styles. I'm going to turn off those viewport layers. And then we're going to take a look at dimensioning these. In the textbook, it talks about creating dimension styles. And so first off, we're going to take a look and just put a dimension in and see what we get. And so if we go to the Annotate tab, the standard dimension style is set. And when we see this little scale here, this style has been set up with annotated dimensions. So it should auto scale into our viewport. So we can come in here and we can go and put in a linear dimension, and we can go, usually I'll use nearest because I want it to touch the wall. And so I'll get a glyph nearest, and then I'll bring it over till it reaches the other one, and then I'll place that dimension. And so it's 14 feet, and I'll do this again with linear. I'll get nearest, shift right click, try to find a spot where I'm not going to cover anything. By 22 feet. And then when we look at that size on our layout tab, it is kind of small. If we wanted to go and tweak that, what we could do is go into the dimension style by clicking on this little arrow here. And here's our dimension style. And if we look at how that's set up, we can go to modify it.
You're in text box first.
Oh, I'm in the wrong one. Thanks, Al.
No problem.
There it is. So we were in standard. All right, so standard is not annotative. I thought it was because it had that. So this is even easier to fix. All we have to do is go to modify. And then on the fit tab, we just change this overall scale. And so we'll change that to, let's try 96, because that's the conversion factor for 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. And you go, well, Joe, how do you know it's 96? 1/8 is 0.125, and take 12 divided by 0.125, and that's 96. And let's see what that does when we update that. Nothing.
You didn't hit set it, set. Go back please one more time. Go back there. Now set current. Say okay, set current.
I see what you're saying. Okay, set current, and then we'll go and use it, and we'll do it again, right?
Yes.
All right. So now we can come in here and put another dimension in. Shift right mouse click, nearest. It's huge. All right. So with that, let's try modifying our text style again. And let's see where that big thing is. I think this is so overridden with so many different things that it might be easier just to, because they're calling all these text heights 1 inch with fit in primary units and things like that. I'm just going to make a new one, and we can talk about this as we go through. But if I go with new, and I'll call it Joe, and I'll continue. What I would do is I would set this up with a text height of 0.25.
Change the text style too, please, at the same time.
Sure. And let's go with something that looks nice, like City Blueprint. There we go. So we'll go with City Blueprint, and I've dialed it in as a text height of 1/4 of an inch. And so on the fit tab, this is really what makes it bigger or smaller. And so we'll say, let's say 12. Primary units will be architecture. We'll okay that.
Set current.
Set current and close it. And let's see how that looks. That's a lot better. And from a perspective of how big the room is and that room size, this will work just fine for us. And so we'll go into the chapter and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But at this time, since we're making a recording, we'll come back to the textbook and tie that in when we do that component. And so we can get our room sizes as 11 feet 7 inches by 14 feet and 1/2 inch. So that's the job for this exercise. Students are to calculate out the room sizes, fill in the area table, and place the dimensions on the rooms, and then fill in the title block with your name, and project will be Lab 7A, date and scale. Okay, Al, is there anything else that I need to tie into this project?
Not currently. You did a great job.
All right, so I'm going to end this recording and we'll post this part of the recording, and then we'll do a second recording so we don't make one big long one. All right, so that ends this part of our recording. Let me see if I can figure out how to turn this off.